right. Hey, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Hello.
Okay, so this is the first session of the first day of the Fast Company Grill, and my name is, thank you for that, appreciate it. My name is Ifeanyi. I lead the editorial programming for our events at Fast Company, and I honestly could not think of a better way to just kick things off than with writer, producer, all-around bon vivant, Paul Feig.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so last night you premiered your latest film, Another Simple Favor, here at South by Southwest.
Yep.
And for those who may not have seen the first film or just need a refresher, I'd love for you to give people, just get us up to speed on where we left off on the first film and what people can expect from the sequel.
Yeah, the first film was the coming together of these two very different mothers.
Very different.
Yes, exactly. Who Blake Lively's character, Emily, basically disappears, and Annick's character of Stephanie has to find her, and they go through a lot of different things and find out that there was a whole setup, and that Blake actually didn't die, even though we think she did, and she was getting going for the insurance money. So sent her to jail. So now we go to this new one, and Blake has gotten out of jail. Emily's out of jail because she's found an old paramour, a very rich Italian man who got her out, and now they go to Italy for their wedding, and murder and mayhem ensue.
Love that log line. So you said last night.
I just woke up, so.
No, come on. You said last night at the premiere and quite a few times in interviews that you're usually terrified of sequels.
Yeah.
So, but after A Simple Favor, you felt that there was more to be done with these characters. So why are sequels so terrifying for you?
Well, sequels are terrifying because people like the first movie because they're discovering the characters for the first time. And so to bring back these characters, you're not meeting them again. So you usually solve those characters' problems in the first movie. So they come out of it more complete and healed, if you will. So to go into a sequel, it's like, well, do we make them fall apart again and then bring them back together? So it's really hard. Like, people always think they want a Bridesmaids sequel, but at the same time, that was all about repairing Kristen Wiig's character in her life. So you don't want to go back and like, oh, she's a mess again, So then it's like, we'll just go for a crazy wedding. So you have to find some way to bring it up to the next level and surprise people. And these two characters, I felt, could do that because they were, if I could take them out of their comfort zone and put them somewhere else, and it happened to be on the island of Capri for this very expensive wedding, it would be fun to see how they react to all that.
And for the record, we do want a sequel to Bridesmaids, so I think if you can just figure it out, because
there you go, Kristen, get writing, exactly.
So I mean, that's the thing. I'm curious, like, you touch on it a little bit, but like, what is the basis for a good sequel? Because knowing that you're taking this really thoughtful approach to it, I think that for me as just a regular audience member, I think it's very clear that in a lot of instances, it's a cash grab.
Yeah, it's a total money grab.
So you see the first film did well, and then of course you're like, oh, okay, just do another one. Like, story be damned. So
yeah.
For you, I would love to hear a little bit more about the tenets of what makes a good sequel.
Well, the big thing that I've kind of studied over the years, and I've had some, we've hired some kind of people that look at the internet and kind of get the feeling that people have about things. And the biggest question audiences ask about a sequel is, why do I need to see this? And it used to be just so automatic. A sequel did great, so now let's put another one out. And I think people got burned by so many sequels just being like a rehash of what they saw, or kind of going in such a different direction that they're like, wait, I like the first one. That you got to figure out why this has to exist. And for me, it was like, again, like I said, it was taking Stephanie, the whole first one was what I called suburban noir. It all took place in the suburbs, bright daylight, mystery and mayhem going on. And so I thought, well, the only way to do this is to take Stephanie, who kind of conquered that world, and put her in a completely different world. Let's send her into a very rich world in Europe, and surrounded by these very rich people and the mafia and all this stuff, and see how she reacts to that. And then Emily has a whole new mystery of what's she up to, what's she doing, is she trying to kill me, does she need me here for some reason? And then we just threw in a whole bunch of other twists that are, insane. So
yeah. So I mean, has this experience opened you up up to doing more sequels? Because I was poking around your IMDb, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw Spy 2.
Yeah, I know. Don't believe anything
okay,
you say on
got it.
IMDb. I'm always about, like, oh, really? I'm making that? Okay, I guess.
So for the record, it's not happening? It is happening?
No, I mean, if there was another one of my films to do a sequel to, it would be Spy, just because it's kind of a natural progression. And I play around with some storylines for it, and I have a really funny idea for what it could be. So we'll see. You know, I mean, the cast calls me occasionally, like, "Hey, are we doing another one?" It's like,
of course they do.
Maybe.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I mentioned, you know, we talked about Bridesmaids, Spy, which is having its 10th anniversary this year.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. And there's also The Heat. You've created Freaks and Geeks. Like, you've created so many films and TV shows that have really stuck in pop culture. It's really, like, hit the zeitgeist. So, what is it to create something so enduring? Like, knowing that there's like a plethora of film and TV shows out there, but you managed to consistently create things that have sticking power. So what is the secret to that?
If I knew, everything would work. you know, it's really just kind of, you got to make stuff that you really are passionate about and care about, but then you have to run it through a second filter, which I always tell filmmakers and I tell myself all the time. Okay, I have an idea. I think it's great. Now, if I went to a movie theater and the trailer for that idea came up and I didn't know me and I didn't know anything about it, would I go like, oh, wow, I want to see that? Or would I go like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, and it's kind of a hard litmus test to put yourself through. But if you're really honest with yourself, you can go, oh, yeah, maybe that just seems like something else I've seen or doesn't seem, you know, sexy enough or whatever, funny enough, big enough. So, you know, I like to take ideas that I care. All I care about is characters and character dynamics. Mm-hmm. That's what people latch into. And then the story is something you layer on top of that. If you go for story first, you're already kind of in a bad place because then you're going, oh, and then what characters can I plug into this story? And the story has to come from these characters. And then then the audience is engaged with the story because they care so much about the characters. You know, we've seen so many movies that are super plotty, and you're like, oh, okay, and you kind of go along for the ride, but you're not emotionally invested. Right. And so it's all about just creating characters that people really care about, they see themselves in, they feel for, they want to root for, and then finding the most fun story to put them through. Right. You know, but that's I always, like I said, I think you have to architect a story, characters first, then story.
Right. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about you as, honestly, a tastemaker, because I know A Simple Favor was adapted from a book. You have an upcoming, another one, The Housemaid, that's also adapted from a book. So what catches your eye when you think about the things that you choose to adapt, the things that you choose to make a film out of? Like, what catches your eye?
Well, I mean, we read a lot of stuff. We get sent a lot of stuff, turn a lot of stuff down. You're just looking for something you can connect with. It's honestly, it's like trying to find a spouse, you know, because you are going to be spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's all you think about. It's all you dream about. It's all you care about for the year, 2 years, however long it is that project's going. So I've had a couple I've gone like, well, yeah, maybe. And like within a month, you're like, forget it. I don't have the energy for this. And it's not sticking.
You need to get a divorce.
Yeah, you have to get a divorce. Exactly. So, yeah, so you've got to be passionate about it. And then find that thing in it. Like I had said earlier, go like, oh, I would want to see this, you know. And, yeah, so like we just finished production on The Housemaid. Mm-hmm. You know, that book's, it's a great book. Yeah. And it was a great adaptation that this writer did, Rebecca did. And, so I was just like, oh my God, I have to do this. And then we got Sydney Sweeney, and, you know, Amanda Seyfried, and they're just like, so then your brain starts clicking up of like, oh my God, we've got all these elements and an awesome story, and these characters are so great. Yeah. And then it was just so much fun to shoot.
Love that. Yeah. And I mean, you've become so synonymous with comedy. I mean, that's really been what you've built your career on. Yeah. And even in movies like A Simple Favor, that's largely, you know, it has drama, it has thriller aspects, but there's also genuinely funny moments, like pure comedic moments in that film. But we just talked about The Housemaid, which seems like a pure psychological thriller. So I'm curious. I mean, like, what is that something like? How do you sort of wrap your mind around that story, knowing that it is somewhat of a departure for you?
Well, again, the stake. I want something with high stakes and like you're just like you care about it. And to me, the comedy will come naturally. You can't force the comedy in. The comedy has to come organically from the characters and the situations. Because if you're just trying to jam jokes in, you're disrespectful to the characters and the tone. I'm very much about the tone. Like, I'm very respectful of the genre. I love genres. It's my favorite thing. If you look at all my movies, they're all genre movies, basically. And I like to be very religious to the genre. and then play within that. And you can find the things, if you're respectful of the genre and you don't try to subvert the genre in a way that you're like, you like this genre? Well, screw you, you know. It's really, but to go like, you know, we all know the tropes.
Right.
Now we can play with them a little bit. That's where the comedy comes from. It comes from the extremeness of the character.
Right.
You know, and you know, we're not going for jokes per se. It's funny. I did my last movie was called Jackpot. And it was, I want to do a balls out Jackie Chan, hilarious physical comedy. And we had a ton of jokes and stuff. And audiences, like, at our test screenings, they were like, oh, too many jokes. Like, people are weird about jokes now. Like, comedy is really shifted from 10 years ago.
Right.
Where you could get away with more because people demand honesty. Of their characters, and they don't. If something go like, "Oh, that's really written," or "Okay, that's a gag," they don't like it. But if it comes organically from the behavior and the interaction of the characters, then they love it.
Right.
You know, and so that's what we're always trying to find is like, what's that natural thing? But that really just comes from getting great actors who can do extreme characters, take them right to the edge, not go over the top where you don't believe it, but they're extreme characters that are believable. Then their interactions, that's where you start to laugh. And sometimes you're just laughing because like, oh my God, I can't believe that person said that, or that's so extreme, or even just like, oh my God, I'm laughing because this situation is so uncomfortable right now.
Right.
That, to me, that's my favorite kind of comedy.
Okay, so to that point, I was going to ask, I mean, do you feel like where comedy is heading or where it's at now is in line with your comedic sensibilities, or do you find yourself having to adapt?
Well, comedy is struggling right now. Straight up comedy. Yeah. You know, and I was just reading something HBO said, like, we want hard comedies. You know, and that's for TV. I think you can get away with it.
Hard comedy. Like
hard comedy means just a lot of jokes and a lot of laughs, but not even jokes. Just the audience has to be laughing all the time. I love people say that. It's like, okay, great. Well, go ahead. You do it. You create it. It's people are very distrustful of comedy. Unless it's like stand-up or something, but if it's like a story that is a comedy, they, you know, every time I've had a movie out that's a comedy, we show the trailer, and over the years it's gotten worse and worse. People get hostile about the trailer. They're like, well, clearly all the funniest jokes are in the trailer, and like everybody thinks you're trying to pull something over on them. And I think it's because a lot of people have seen comedies that don't quite work. Yeah. You know, and because of that, you have to put the pill in the peanut butter, basically, you know, and make sure you're telling. But I like it because they're being much more honest about the storytelling and the stakes and the believability. Because, you know, there's been movies in the past, you know, when I made Spy and stuff, but there's been movies about, you know, cops and stuff like this, but then it has like a silly villain, you know. And if there's a silly villain, there's no stakes. You know, but you can have a villain who's like, he's kind of funny, and then he kills somebody, and you're like, oh shit, okay, so he's funny, but he's also dangerous. Now I'm worried. Right. Then the audience clicks in versus like, well, he's just silly and he's a buffoon and he's not going to hurt anybody. So what are the stakes here? I'm just watching a bunch of jokes. Right. It falls apart. So you have to have stakes. I used to get so mad when executives would say like, what are the stakes? We got to raise the stakes. I go, what does that mean? But I know now you have to have stakes. It just has to be investment in the characters, and they have to have a lot on the line and a lot to lose, because that's all we care about in human beings and in our lives.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, because I know with, you know, Another Simple Favor and with many of your films, like you do go through the process of like having test audiences and you know, just like seeing how it works. So I'd love it if you could sort of walk us through if there's an example of something that needed workshopping, essentially. Like how do you sort of like play off of what maybe didn't land or didn't work in a test audience and go back?
Yeah, I mean, I rely heavily on test audiences. I mean, you know, the DGA gives us contractually 10 weeks to do our director's cut, so like nobody can come in and do that. So most, you know, directors, you take your 10 weeks. 5 weeks in, at least, the most, will do a test screening without the studio. Just, I want to see what I have, you know, and I can sit around all day and go like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, you know, and then I can spend another 5 weeks polishing what I think is the greatest thing ever, and then I get in front of an audience and go like, all right, well, that didn't work, or that scene I thought was going to kill. I mean, I can give you an exact example. When we did Bridesmaids, we, you know, put together what we thought was the most hilarious cut, and then we did something that my old producing partner Judd Apatow loves to do, which is get all our comedy people together and watch the first cut. Well, we did that, and it destroyed, because everybody in comedy has seen so much stuff that they're like, oh, I've never seen that before, so that's great. audiences don't necessarily love everything to be challenging and like to be making fun of things that they think is funny. So a bunch of comedy people go like, that's so great because you made fun of that thing that normally gets a laugh out of an audience, blah, blah, blah. So we're all like, oh my God, we won. We're the greatest thing ever. So we go to this first test screening, and the opening of the movie, which is, she's in bed with John Hamm the next morning, and she's like, oh, doesn't want to leave, and he's trying to kind of get her to go. And we had this long sequence. It was really funny of her trying to stay in bed, and he's trying to give her hints, and she's like, oh, I don't. And it eventually ended with him literally pulling her out of the bed. She's hanging onto the bed. We thought it was hilarious, and so did our comedy people. We screen it. It gets no laughs. I mean, it is stone silence. And you're like, what happened? And then I go like, oh my God, she's pathetic. She's so pathetic that people are just like, ugh, like I can't take this woman. So when we went back in, and it's like she's doing the thing, blah, blah, blah. And the minute he says like, I don't want to sound like a dick, but I'd really like you to get out of here, you cut right to her walking out, and people are like, oh, and then they gets a giant B-side laugh, we call it, which is,
right.
And then, her stuck on the gate, and then you're just like, oh my God, this poor woman, she tried so hard to do the right thing, and she lost. So, but you only could learn that from a test screening. If I just relied on all my comedy friends for that, I would have had a big bomb on my hands.
So to that point, and which, I mean, you didn't, obviously, but
it worked out, thank God.
I mean, so how do you know when to listen to, say, a test audience or outside voices versus sticking to your gut? Like, where's that balance for you?
You know what?
Because if you had a room full of comedy friends being like, this is hilarious, you could have been like, yeah, I got the sign of approval from all these people.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get them. I'm making studio movies, and if I don't make a movie that makes the most amount of money or gets the most amount of streaming views or whatever it is from a general audience, I have failed, and I will not get another movie. If a test audience doesn't like something I thought was great, and I think it's really great, I'll test it again. And if it doesn't get something again, it's like, you know what? You got to, as they say, kill your babies. You got to get rid of that thing because it's just going to drag you down. And the nice thing about, I bemoan the loss of DVDs because we used to put out all the extras. Yep. So you put all your favorite jokes, in the menu. Now, like, streamers say, oh, yeah, we'll put that out, and they never do. So you have to kind of sneak it out of the internet. But so it was really easy to kill your favorite things back then. But
I still have all my DVDs, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, physical media.
Oh,
I got holding on to it.
Exactly. No, you have to be hard. You have to be hard on your stuff,
Yeah.
And there's a reason why in an election they can say, 5% of the votes are in, and we're going to call it. Like, you just know, like 200, 300 people in a room who don't know you. And that's a big thing. Test in front of people who don't know you. Having a friends and family screening is useless. If you want to just show your friends what you did, that's fine. But you're not going to get any good empirical data from that because people are going to be nice and they're going to say, oh, we loved it. Or they just, I can't believe you did that. And that's exciting. A regular audience just sits there like, all right, we hate you. Make us not hate you. And you're like, I like that. It should be,
Right. I mean, at the premiere last night, during the Q&A, I heard a couple of things that your cast called you, and just among them was collaborative,
there you go,
kind, giving, nice, a gentleman.
Oh my goodness!
And so, it was just
made him a lot.
So much praise. And so, I mean, my question may already be answered, but I want to hear from you. Like, what is your leadership style? You are the boss as a director, so how do you lead?
I create a safe environment. I want an environment where everybody feels they can weigh in with any idea. And the only thing I ask is if I turn it down, just, let it go. But I want people's ideas. I want their input. Nothing is made in a vacuum. Everything is collaborative. And I really hate the whole auteur thing. Unless you're an animator who draws everything and does all yourself, you're not an auteur. You are working with people. You have a vision, and you use those people to get that vision across. But without those people, you don't make anything. You can't do it. So you hire talented people, and then why would you not want their input? Why would you not want them to bring what they do to it? This whole writer-director thing of like, I spent 5 years writing the script. You're going to say it just the way I wrote it. It's like, well, I don't care if you spent 1,000 years writing it. Like, they are not you. Their mouths don't work like your mouth.
Right.
And so if somebody's like, I don't think I would say it this way. I'm like, cool, how would you say it? And then we'll, go back and forth and go, if you can just, if it hurts the joke, I'm like, well, what if we try it this way? And you find this detente, and it's natural for them, they're invested in it, and they're bringing their energy to it. I hate when anybody tries to cut off the talent of somebody else because they're going to plus it up. I can just so many jokes in all my movies. I go like that came out of that person. You know, that was their idea in the moment.
Right.
You know, so why would I turn that down? I still get credit for it. You know?
Fair enough.
You know, come on, my name's on there.
Have you always had that approach, or is that something you evolved into? I guess, like, how would you say your leadership style as a director?
Yeah, well, I always my goal was always to create a safe, happy set because I can't work if there's any conflict or drama at all. I just shut down. But I expanded. You know, when we did Freaks and Geeks, that was very written. You know, but it was a TV show, and you're on such a tight schedule. It was really going into when I started working on things like Arrested Development and The Office, where we were just, especially on The Office, like Greg Daniels, who ran that, was so open to people experimenting and trying stuff because he had such a brilliant cast. And in TV, so many showrunners are like, because I was an actor for 15 years, and you're like, I want to change this line. They're like, well, you got to go talk to the showrunner, and he's up, and you have to schedule an appointment. It's like, really? I got to schedule an appointment to change but to and? There's, so they're so mercurial about all that stuff, and it's like, I just don't think good things get made that way. You know, one of the things there's two things I keep in my office all the time. One is a bust of Shakespeare, so I can tell myself and all the writers around us, we're not Shakespeare, so we can change this stuff. This is not sacred text. And the other is a model of the Titanic. Just because I go, no matter how good anything seems, it can totally go down in a minute. So,
okay, fair enough.
Stay focused, exactly. Stay hard on it.
I love that. And, I want to also touch on something that I noticed in the premiere last night. Your gin brand made a cameo.
What?
I know, what? How'd that get there?
Really? I didn't know it was in there.
So, Ardingstall, right? So it's like you started this in 2020, your gin brand Ardingstall.
Yeah.
And which is a perfect time to start a spirits brand.
I know. Well, that was when it launched in 20. We'd been developing it up till then. We were ready to launch. The pandemic hit. So
yeah. So, this, to my knowledge, is your first foray into consumer goods, right? Like in terms of like having something that people.
Yeah, well, I did a collaboration with J. Crew a few years ago where I did a line of suits and shirts and ties and cufflinks and all that thing that sold out immediately, and it did really well. But then they fired everybody at the company who was in charge of it, so that didn't come back. But this is my first time doing something completely original out of the box.
So what was that process of turning something? Because obviously you have a passion for gin, you have a passion for cocktails. I remember your quarantine cocktail hour.
There you go.
During the pandemic. So how do you?
There's Tipsy Fan right there.
I love it. So how do you go through that process of taking something taking a passion into a product?
You just have to be really tenacious about it. I'm lucky because I'm with this agency CAA. They have kind of a brand section, and I just went to them. Same thing with the J. Crew thing. I was like, I really want to put out a line of clothes, and with them, it's like I've been trying for years to do my own gin because I know what I want it to taste like, and they finally kind of went around and found this one company, Minhas, out of Canada, who at the moment were just looking to do like a prestige liquor because they do a lot of like well spirits and beer. And so it just happened to link up, and they saw my lifestyle and kind of how I dress and stuff on the internet, and thought that would be really good for them. And so we linked up and developed this gin, from scratch, which was really exciting. And but it's just hard. We've been trying to get it out in the world for 5 years, and it's just tough. You got to get distributors. We're out there, but we need bigger distributors. But that suddenly you'll just kind of break through. Aviation was in the first Simple Favor before anybody knew what it was, and now it's big. So now Ardingstall's is in the sequel.
As it should be. So
shameless.
No, come on. It's your film.
It's a good-looking bottle. It's a good-looking bottle.
So I'm curious. Do you see this as the tipping point for an expansion of perhaps an empire? I think you see so many people start in one alley of being a director, in your case, actor in a previous life, but then they expand it to so much more, and it becomes this whole brand, so to say. So
it's hard
to
see
some Paul Feig glasses. I can see some Paul Feig ties.
I would love it, but the thing, it depends how much time you have to put into stuff. That's what I'm finding with the gin. If I was only doing the gin, I would be much more out there glad handing and doing all that stuff. You can only have so much time. But it's funny, the younger stars I work with, they're really good at that.
Yeah.
Really good at that. And I'm just like, wow, I'm always trying to study them. Like, how do you have these brands going and do all this stuff? But they delegate it out. They have teams, they do it, but they have great ideas and they're really savvy about social media and how to get things out there in a way that me as a 62-year-old man, like, oh, what's cool now? You know, it drives me crazy. Every time we're trying to market something, everybody's trying to like create content to go viral. I'm like, ugh. You know, you can't. It just happens somehow. You can't. You should try to do it, but it's the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
To try to pull that off, and you just feel like an old dude. What are the kids into these days? Oh God.
No, not you. No.
Not me. I'm young.
Young at heart. Come on now. No, I mean, that's the thing. So I feel like how has that been for you? Because your career, including acting, you've been around for like what? Nearly 40 years now?
Yeah.
So for you,
a long time.
It's a long time. I mean, and you're still obviously incredibly relevant and still very much out there. So what is it about you, do you think, that's made you stick around for as long as you have? Because that's not something that most people can say, especially someone who's had a successful career acting, then you pivoted into writing, directing, producing, all that. So what is your secret?
I love it. I don't know what else I would do. I mean, I'm just driven by it every day. Always been very ambitious. I love it. This is my bread and butter. It's my lifeblood. You know, I love entertaining people, and I love trying to find things that people would like. You know, and that's why I'm never, you know, the whole movie thing of like trying to make movies that are Oscar bait. It has no interest to me whatsoever, because I just want to entertain an audience. That is a filmmaker. As storytellers, I think, you know, look, you can do things because you want to get an important point across and say something important, but if you don't entertain people while you're doing it, it becomes homework, you know, and we always, in our company, always kind of refer to certain movies as like, okay, well, that's a homework movie. Like, I know I should watch it, and I know it's going to be really good, but you know, okay, I'll watch it, versus like, okay, I want to see that. That looks really fun. And that's why, again, I go back to genre movies. I love genre movies. You know, and I think all the movies that got nominated this year and every year are great. But there's so many movies that I love, that I'm so passionate about, that I see during the year, and you go like, that's not going to get anything other than it just entertained the hell out of an audience.
Right.
That's the prize, you know.
For sure. So is there a genre that what do you want to explore next?
Oh gosh, musical, definitely. Got to make a musical. Dying to do that, but it's got to be an original one.
Yeah.
Those are really hard to do. Big sci-fi epic, Western. I mean, there's so many different genres to play with.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and it's just fun trying to figure out what I'm going to do next.
I love that. A Paul Feig musical.
It would be fun.
Do you sing?
No. I think I do, but nobody else does.
No, I think that would be amazing. So, I mean, kind of going back to Another Simple Favor, because like I said, it really was this insane movie, which I don't want to give any spoilers, but like in many instances, I can say you went there.
Yeah.
And there's one thing in particular that we will not talk about, but like, my God. So for you, like, what boundaries do you have in comedy?
Well, I mean, I don't think the only boundaries I have is don't make fun of something that people can't change about themselves. Okay. You know, make fun of how they are, because they can change their behavior and they can change their personality. But don't make fun of something physical they have or whatever. That's not funny to me at all. But beyond that, go for it and then kind of see how far you can push it. But don't offend anyone. You know, I'm really... so many people in comedy are like, oh, you can't say anything these days. You know, it's like, I don't agree with that. I don't want to offend anybody. So if I'm going to say something that's going to offend somebody, I don't want to say it. I don't want to get a laugh that way. It's a cheap laugh.
Yeah.
You know, and right now we're in the age of the bully, where it's all just about punching the wound, I call it. All everybody's doing is just punching everybody else's wound, and it's just like, fucking stop it. You know, you can make people laugh just talking about human behavior and the picadillos that we have and the extremeness of people around us and how we interact. That's where all the fun stuff comes from. You know, in Another Simple Favor, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
That would just kind of like, that came out of a weird personal thing of like, when as a kid, I don't want to give anything away. It was just kind of like, this could work, right? And then...
Whoa.
Tried it.
Watch the movie.
Watch the movie.
You'll
know what he's talking about.
It is a ride. But no, I think, do you feel like more people are aligned with how you feel about comedy? Because you're right. A lot of people are like, oh, you can't make jokes these days. You can't do this. Like, do you feel, I guess, like, where is the state of comedy right now, and like where do you fit in?
Well, comedy's in a really, like, stand-up comedy is fantastic right now. It's like, that's probably the best art form that comedy has at the moment. And it always has been, because it's the most, it's the reason why soccer is all over the world. All you need is a ball in your foot, and you can play. In comedy is, all you need this, a microphone and a stage, and you create, this whatever you want to say, and however you want to make people laugh. So I think that's the purest thing. And I was a stand-up for a long time, and all my movie making comes from my stand-up days. Testing an audience, that's how you would work your act. You kind of have your act and go up, you try it. Well, that joke didn't work, let's replace that joke. And I do the same thing with my movies. We shoot a lot of different alts and jokes and stuff, and go like, let's try that. Oh, that didn't work. Let's plus it up in the next test screening. So I think how I fit in, I think just go back to entertaining people. That's all that matters, and don't worry so much. I think the good thing now is studios used to be like, is it a comedy or a drama? It can't be both. They used to call it mixed genre. Like, you can't do a mixed genre movie. That's the way you had the hardest time kind of getting the first Simple Favor made, because it's like, oh, no, we can't do it as mixed genre. Like, well, what does that mean? Well, is it a comedy or a drama? You're going to confuse the audience. And now people are getting better at going like, cool, I'm just going to go along for the ride. Horror is really the new comedy right now. Horror movies are... like a movie like Megan, that's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Abigail, did you see that movie?
Yep.
That's fucking awesome, and it goes so over the top, and I love that. I'd rather see a movie that doesn't quite work because the filmmaker just went so nuts with it, versus like everybody's trying to tiptoe around and we got to win an award, we got to get the critics happy. You know what? You just make the audience happy. If I got a test screening where everybody laughed and we get a giant applause at the end, and then the critics hate it, I'm like, you know what? Give me the audience any day.
Well, I mean, you've entertained this audience, I think, very much. So, Paul, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
No,
Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful.
I really appreciate it.
Paul Feig.
Thank you. Good guys. Thanks, gang.